And we are live on the Voice of the Cape Facebook and YouTube platforms for today's edition of the VOC Matric revision session. And we are covering religion studies, grade 12. And that is just also guiding you in preparing for your exams, as I know many of you of our matriculants, they are preparing, putting in extra time to study, alhamdulillah. So hopefully through these sessions, you can also benefit and gather some, tips from experts in the field in terms of the different subjects. But today our guest is our guest facilitator is Fatima Adamson, and she is an educator at Futures Academy Online High School. Assalamu alaikum, Fatima.
Wa salam wa rahmatullah. How are you, Qanita?
I'm very well, alhamdulillah. And I'm just also very happy to have you back today because last week, we didn't have such a good day in terms of internet connectivity and
Yeah.
load shedding. And yeah, so we're back today.
Yes, Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
I'm glad to be back. With this load shedding and network and connectivity, we predict that these kind of things will happen. But Alhamdulillah, today we sorted.
We sorted, yes. And then also to you, the viewer, in the description, there is a link to Futures online Futures Academy Online High School's website. There is some free notes there of today's session. I know it's dated for last week, but it would
Yes,
apply to today's session,
yes,
inshallah. So without
yes.
further delay, and I hand over to you, Fatima, to proceed.
Shukran so much, Qanita. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good afternoon to the learners, colleagues of mine, and anyone who's going to benefit from this. Alhamdulillah, we are at part two of revision for our grade 12 papers, which are coming quite soon on the 11th and the 14th of November. So today we're going to do a continuation on paper one, as last week, or sorry, the week before, we managed to get three-quarters of the way. So we're going to finish off with paper one, and then we are going to move on to paper two and what to expect in paper two. Okay, so just to give a bit of a recap on the last 2 weeks ago, what we had done, we had gone through the paper one and looked at the exam guidelines, and we spoke about the paper one having a section A, which was compulsory and out of 50 marks. And I advised that the last 5 years question papers, learners go through that in order to adequately prepare for section A, and obviously in addition to their study notes. Okay, so section B we were looking at 2 weeks ago, and I think we only got up until investigating media coverage on public issues that have religious implications. So today we are going to touch on the final topic, which is a topic that I would advise learners to do, which is this topic over here, which is religion in areas of recent conflict in South Africa, Africa, and the world. Okay, so I'm just going to go to that slide. Okay, so the topic and the final topic that we're going to be looking at in paper one in section B is the topic of religion in areas of recent conflict. So, as I said before in the first lesson that I'd given, I am going to share some resources with you guys, and this PowerPoint as well, so that we are all or we all have access to the resources that the department has given us. And the Department of Basic Education, they have developed these self-study guides for religion studies, and we are so happy to endorse this. So if you just click on this link, it will take you right to the Google Drive, and we will look at book 3 today, which is the book on recent conflict. This is also a topic that the department has highlighted as to be one of the topics that learners struggle with, and hence why I am covering it today. Okay, so very importantly, with this topic, we're going to look at conflict that happens within South Africa, Africa, and the world. So before we even look at the conflicts in South Africa, Africa, and the world, we actually need to know what the conflict is, right? So we need to be able to understand, define what a conflict is. So conflict, as you should know, is basically a disagreement between two parties, and they cannot come to a resolution on that. Okay, so very importantly, they give you three options here in the conflict. So it is conflict within South Africa. So we may not have conflict that is, a conflict between Muslims and Christians, or a major conflict that has caused war, but they could possibly put in a what's it called, an extract on, let's say, for example, xenophobia, which is also a kind of conflict between foreigners and people of the particular country, which is South Africa. And then we look at conflict in Africa, right? So very importantly, we need to be able to master a conflict within Africa, and then also a conflict around the world. Okay, so an example that we learn in religion studies is the conflict within Africa is the Darfur Sudan conflict, and then in the world, learners tend to go with the Israel Palestine conflict. Okay, so very importantly, in this book, in book 3, right? So in book 3, you will have the Darfur Sudan conflict stipulated, and it is very important for you to also know where the conflict has originated, right? Whether the conflict is a inter-religious conflict or intra-religious conflict, and knowing the distinction between the two. So when we look at an inter-religious conflict, we look at a conflict that is happening between two different religions. For example, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it is an inter-religious conflict between two religions, right? But when we look at an intra-religious conflict, we are looking at a conflict that is within a particular religion. So the Protestants and the Catholics, or the Sunnis and the Shias, right? So very important to know that distinction. And then with this topic in the exam guidelines, it is always going to be emphasized whether religion played a part in this conflict, right? So does religion form a part of the problem, right? So you have to be able to analyze the conflict and look at it, from an objective position, and look at it whether the religion actually was the problem, or whether it was just an additional factor or additional way in which the politics or the resources of the country use religion in order to get people to get the people to basically choose sides. Okay, so very importantly to know whether in that particular conflict, whether the religion was the actual part of the problem. Okay, and then a second type of question that they like to ask in this question is, in what ways does religion form part of the solution, right? And this is also one of the basic reasons why we study religion studies as well, is because we have to also look at how can religion form part of the solution. And we see this with all conflicts in the world, the Myanmar Muslims, etc. We how can religion form part of the solution? So looking at religious organizations, what they can do in order to dissipate the conflict, and also resolve it. Okay. And then, like I said before, this question is highly advisable by me, right? Because it is a question that does come in a lot, right? It does come in a lot because again, it is relevant to our world, and therefore it is important for us to also study this. Okay, so again, before I move on, that DBE 2022 self study guide books, book 3 is the book on religion in areas of recent conflict, and all of these points that I have stipulated here, it can be found in this book, right? So you can basically just go to it and therefore make your study notes and master this question. So I extracted this from the 2021 November paper. And again, here we see an extract of Uganda, and automatically when you see Uganda, you will know that this is a conflict that is probably a conflict that is happening in Africa. Okay, so they ask you questions on the extract. As you can see in 5.1, it is basically just looking at the text and understanding it. 5.2 looks at to what extent is this a religious conflict, and again it ties into the previous slide when I stipulated whether religion is part of the problem, right? So to what extent is this a religious conflict, and give reasons for your answer. So boys and girls, you see that it is 12 marks. And an important point that I want to make here, based on one of my, or the advice of one of my colleagues who also marks with me for religion studies paper 1, because I do paper 2, and she said, you know what, Adamson, please tell the learners to write in point form, and to write in point form. Unless otherwise stated, right? So with a question like this, you're going to write in point form, and you're going to write at about 6 to 7 points to afford yourself that 12 marks. Okay, and then 5.3, as you can see, how can religious organizations help in the conflict? So religious organizations need to be able to unite communities, speak about the particular conflicts and what the stance is of that religion, right? And how do we deal with conflict in different types of religions? And then explain the following concepts and give one relevant example of each. And there, intra-religious conflicts come in, and then also inter-religious conflicts come in as well. So know an example of it just in case they ask you for one. And then part of this question, and it ties into what I had spoken about in my previous live, is that sometimes a question can be combined with 2 or more topics. So if you look at this question 5, the first part of it, which is majority of the marks, comes from the topic religious conflict in South Africa, Africa, and the world. But the second part is 5.5 and 5.6. So 5.5 looks at what are some of the structures, the formal structures in South Africa that liaise with each other and with the government in relation to Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism, right? So looking at what formal structures are they in place, what organizations are they in place. So you need to know that in Christianity in South Africa, that the South African Council of Churches is one of them, right? So basically you need to know that the different religions have certain organizations in South Africa that liaise with each other in order to in order to bridge certain misunderstandings, to come together, to have certain conversations that relate to everybody in the country. Okay, so for Christianity, it's the South African Council of Churches. For Hinduism, it's the South African Hindu Maha Sabha, right? And in Islam, it's obviously the MJC, or you can mention the United Ulama Council of South Africa. Okay, and then Judaism, the South African organization that represents Judaism is the Jewish Board of Deputies. Okay, and then the final question here in this paper is 5.6, right? So 5.6 looks at, do you think religious conflicts are common in Africa? Give reasons for your answer. So in this, for this particular question, again, you go to the DBE book and it will be there stipulated 5 or more points in order to afford yourself 10 marks over here. Okay, so religious conflicts are common in Africa because of factors that exacerbates these kind of conflicts. So lack of resources, poverty, missionary religions. As we know, Islam and Christianity are missionary religions, and their purpose is to bring people towards the particular religion. So there can be a conflict with regards to adherence, or how many adherents are being reverted or converted to the particular religions. Okay, and that is the end of section B. And I want to share this with you because, again, these are all resources, because religion studies is a fairly new subject and it's not as common as your geographies and your life science, etc. Right? We have a couple of schools in Cape Town and in the other provinces that offer religion studies, but because of it's not a majority. We are not in a majority. We have now, alhamdulillah, gotten some resources from the Department of Basic Education, and we look at self-study guide book 10. Right now, in book 10, what this ma'am has done for us, right? Her name is Martha. She has collated question papers and memorandums for us, right? So in there, she even breaks down the topics to the relevant question paper, so that you know what question paper, what questions to prepare for, right? So very importantly, if you tick on the link, once we share the slides with you, you will be taken straight to the Google Drive, and you're able to access these resources. Okay, and that is the end for paper one. I hope that has helped. Just in closing, right? Paper one is happening on the 11th of November, and it is also a paper that we write in the afternoon, both paper one and paper two. And based on the examination timetable, I've seen they've paired religion studies up with physics, which they've done before, and they've done with other subjects as well, life science, etc. And based on my previous experiences, boys and girls, when you are doing physics or life science or a subject in the morning, and you're doing religion studies at 2, from 2 till 4, usually it is important for you to prepare adequately, because you know, and we know, that yes, you want to focus on physics, and yes, you want to focus on life science, etc., but you do have a paper in that afternoon as well. So use your time adequately and sparingly between the two subjects that you're going to be preparing, be preparing for. It is important for you to not open that religion studies book or textbook the morning after you have written physics. It is not going to give you the results that you want to see. Remember, I say to my learners, religion studies is a subject that once you put in the effort and you really try to understand the work, it is a possible, highly probable a subject. Okay, so please, boys and girls, manage your time. 11th of November is very soon, so manage your time, prepare adequately, use the time that you have now to split your topics. Choose the topic that you're going to master yourself, or that you're going to master, and then inshallah it will go well on the 11th. Okay, so today we're going to look at religion studies paper 2 preparation, which happens on the 14th of November 2022. Also a 2 o'clock paper, and I know some of my learners are also writing either physics or life science, I'm not sure, but again, paper 2 happens in the afternoon from 2 till 4, because it's a 2-hour paper for 150 marks. Okay, so what is to be expected in paper 2? Now, different to paper 1, right? Different to paper 1. Paper 1 has a compulsory question, whereas paper 2, we now have no compulsory question. You have an option of three questions to make that 150 marks, right? Each question then being 50 marks each. Okay, so the question paper can have 4 questions and it can have 5 questions as well. I think last year we had a four question paper, so expect a 5 question paper, but be prepared for a four question paper. Okay, so again, questions will focus on analyzing and interpreting generic issues pertaining to religions. Candidates are expected to present a position on the issue or issues from a religion studies perspective. Very importantly, right? You cannot choose another perspective. It needs to be within the religion studies perspective, and then you have to argue this position and also critique it. Okay, so there can be sources in this question paper. So in order for you to think about the particular topic that you have prepared for, so it can act as a stimulus. Okay, so today we're going to look at the central teachings in one religion, and we're going to look at this topic because this topic is a topic that I would advise you to do, right? I would advise you to do because it's quite simple. And in paper two, what we have observed is that we always going to have a specialization in one religion, right? So we're going to look at a question paper later in the slides where we look at the central teachings in one religion, which makes it easier for you to study for. So if you're looking at the central teachings of Christianity, and I like to tell my learners, choose the religion that you form part of, okay? Because it's easier to recall, and you're able to go and and you have prior knowledge on it. Okay, so again, with specialization in one religion, so here you can choose Christianity, you can choose Islam, or you can choose Taoism, and you're going to specialize and make sure that you know the central teachings of that particular religion in depth. Okay, and then we're going to, if we have time, we're going to look at the role of rituals in religion, and then also next week, inshallah, we're going to look at the internal differences in a number of religions. Okay, so I'll leave it over there. Okay, and as you can see, it continues, right? So the exam guidelines continues to the different topics, but I will go through that with you. So we're just going to focus on the first two today, which is the central teachings in one religion and also the role of rituals in a religion. Okay, so just to give an overview of the topics that come in paper two, it is history and present day dynamics of inter-religious relationships in South Africa, as well as in the international community. Okay, so you're looking at the relationship between politics and religion. What is colonialism? What is imperialism, liberation, and transformation? And then the second topic over here, or sorry, the how much is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth topic is the normative sources topic, right? So what are the normative sources in various religions? Okay, and then the second underlying topic underneath there is how do we interpret these normative sources, looking at the hermeneutical principles and how you need to know that for your paper two. Okay, because that is the normative sources topic is a topic that I also advise learners to do because it is also recalling. And then the eighth topic over there is the religion and the sciences. Lovely topic to do because it also ties into life science when we look at what is the relationship between religion and the natural sciences, looking at creationism, evolution, the Darwin's theory of evolution, and also what are the viewpoints of different religions on these theories. Okay, and then the third final topic that we cover in paper two is looking at the analysis of at least two secular worldviews. Okay, so at least meaning you have to know the others as well. So looking at the worldviews that is stipulated in caps, which is atheism, agnosticism, humanism, and materialism. Okay, but they focus on two and knowing the differences between the two. Okay, and then also underneath a subtopic underneath that is looking at where is the origin, what is the origin, the purpose, the influencing factors behind those two secular worldviews. Okay, so if you choose atheism, what is the origin of atheism? Looking at the purpose of atheism and also the influencing factors. Okay, and then the final topic, which I love, right, is the topic that looks at developing a strategy towards solving a major social problem. So in religion studies, we look at social problems and how religion can solve that particular problem. So if you look over here for the final examination in 2022 and the supplementary examination happening next year, June in 2023, the following three social problems is going to come in, right? So it's either euthanasia, substance abuse, or environmental degradation. So we have to prepare for all three of that. But when I get to this particular topic, I'm going to show you how do you study for all three topics and adequately cover your bases in order to answer those questions adequately. Okay. So we're going to look at the central teachings in one religion. Sorry. Okay. So again, when we look at the central teachings in one religion, we have to look at the specialization in one religion. So you choose your religion, right? So choose Islam if you're Muslim, choose Christianity if you're Christian, choose Judaism if you're a Jew. Okay. So it makes it easy for you to recall. Okay. So the first central teaching that we're going to look at is the nature of divinity. So learners need to know what nature means in the context of religion studies. And when we speak about the nature of divinity, we're speaking about what does the nature, the what is the word, give me a synonym, what does the particular divine, in this case divine speaking about a supreme being, a god, a higher being, what comprises of that divine being. Okay, and then we look at the nature of the world. So when we look at the nature of the world is how does these particular religions view the world, right? And how we as human beings also have to treat everything else in the world. And then thirdly, we look at the nature of humanity with reference to the community and the individual. So, what are the teachings of for example, African traditional religion with regards to how humanity is viewed in relationship to the community and also the individual? So, how are we supposed to be treating people in our community, and how do they relate to us as an individual? And then also we look at the fourth central teaching, which is the place and responsibility of humanity in the world. Where has Christians, or how does God place Christians in the world, right? What responsibilities has God given Christians in the world? And similarly, Allah, where does humans fit in the world? Where are we the highest form of beings? Like in Islam, we believe that humans are the highest form of beings, and therefore we are called the vicegerents of the world. We are supposed to take care of everything in it. Yes, we can slaughter and we can use its resources, but not to the detriment of another species. Okay, and then the fifth central teaching that we're going to be looking at is also the origin and the role of evil and how to overcome it. So I want to highlight here something that if you choose a religion that may not have, for example, a supreme being, because there are religions that don't do not believe in a particular god or don't believe in a god, so that central teaching won't apply. Do you understand? So what I advise is, let's say you do form part of the Taoist religion, but they don't have a nature of divinity. They don't believe in a supreme being because they believe in the universe and the order and flow of the universe, right? I want you to master a religion that does have it. Okay, because usually, most often than not, they love to ask nature of divinity. not so much nature of the world. They love to ask nature of humanity with reference to community and the individual, and also the origin and role of evil and how to overcome it. So most Abrahamic religions and most religions have the origin and of evil, and also the role of evil, and also it stipulates how to overcome evil as well. And then the final one, I think, yes, the final central teaching that we're going to be looking at is life after death. And most religions have a certain teaching about what happens life after death. Okay. So I'm choosing African traditional religion because most of South Africans, we form part of the African traditional religion, and I like to tell my learners master African traditional religion as well, just in case they do stipulate the religion that they want you to write in, instead of asking you to write on the religion that you have studied or chosen. I advise that African traditional religion, in addition to the religion that you form part of, to study the central teachings of ATR. Okay, so we're going to look at the nature of the divine, right, of African traditional religion. So they believe in the existence of a supreme being. Yes. So the adherents of African traditional religion, they do believe that there is a supreme being. Okay. Then they believe that the supreme being is given certain different names in different parts of Africa. So Bembe, Oludumare, Umvelikange, right? So it's important for you to also maybe give an example as well when you're writing this in your question paper, right? So you can write the supreme being is given different names in different parts of Africa. Example, Bembe, because the other two are quite hard to spell actually, right? And then a very important concept under the nature of divinity in ATR, right? So the supreme being does not communicate directly with the living. So in African traditional religion, they believe that this supreme being is so high, is so holy that it cannot communicate directly with the living, and therefore communication needs to happen through intermediaries. Now, intermediary obviously is somebody in the middle, and in this case, in this context of the nature of divine in ATR, it is called the ancestors. Okay, and the ancestors are known as the living dead. Okay, so the living dead. And then African tribes recognize the existence of different gods, such as Oludumare, Bembe. So that is also another point that you can put under the nature of the divinity of African traditional religion. And then we're going to look at what is the nature of humanity with reference to the community and the individual. And you should notice that I skipped the nature of the world here because, again, it is more common for us to look at the topics or look at the central teachings that I'm covering with you this afternoon. Okay, so what is the nature of humanity? We know that in ATR, there's an understanding that there's a relationship between all living beings, right? So there is a relationship between all living beings. And a very important golden rule that we should know in ATR is this principle of I am related, therefore I am. Right? And what this means is that an individual cannot just exist by itself, right? It is a individual, a human being needs to form part of a community, right? Because it cannot just be reduced to one person. So I am related, therefore I am. Very important principle with understanding that there's a deep connection between all living beings in African traditional religion. Then in African traditional religion, we also have a emphasis on the individual depending on the community for growth. So there are certain principles such as Ilima, where when a particular family or particular community is experiencing a loss, the community will rally together and support that particular family. So again, you cannot have growth within the community when you have individuals working by themselves or being to themselves. And then the individual also derives the meaning of life from the community, which serves as the source. It is important to note here that in ATR, the individual gets its meaning, derives its meaning, fosters the meaning of life from the community, right? And it gets that information from the community. As we know, with African traditional religion, it's a oral tradition, right? So children sitting and listening to the elders speaking, right? That is how meaning of life are transferred from generation to generation, although there is normative sources that have been documented to date. Okay, so in African traditional religion, we also have what we call the individual security is attained through the construction of the community. If my neighbor is not secure, the entire community cannot be stable, right? So individual security is attained by the construction of the community. I cannot prosper if my neighbor is not prospering. And then the life after death. Love to ask life after death. So it is highly important for you to know in your religion and also in African traditional religion, what does African traditional religion say about life after death? Okay, so first point is, after a human being dies, in African traditional religion, they believe that he or she departs to the land of the spirits. Okay, so the land of the spirits is the land of the ancestors. Okay, and then in African traditional religion, they believe that this world after death is understood as a place that is occupied by the living dead, that is occupied by the ancestors. Okay. Now, very important to note here is, if you did not perform certain rituals, did not live by the African traditional religion's principles, didn't follow the religion, it is highly unlikely for you to depart to the land of the spirits. Okay. So only those people who have were adherents of African traditional religion, partook in certain rituals, did certain things that aided their community. They get to go to the land of the spirits. Okay, and then this world that the living dead is watching the living from is what we call a place that that oversees the living, right? So the ancestors are overseeing the living, and their purpose is to protect, punish, and sometimes appear to people. And I say to my learners, when we watch African or South African soapies, you will see this coming in the narrative, right? That you have this African man or guy, and he gets called by the ancestors to become a traditional healer, because that is where it comes from. It comes from the ancestors calling that particular person to a gift, which is to be able to communicate between the ancestors and the supreme being. Okay, so the ancestors can punish as well, right? So, and hence why in African traditional religion there are certain rituals that needs to be done to appease the ancestors. Okay, so that they are kept happy, and in turn, if the ancestors are happy, the supreme being will be happy as well. The ancestors also protect, right? So protect the living. So they send signs to the family to initiate the particular boy, or to do the slaughtering for the child that was born, if it wasn't done in the particular time that is prescribed. Okay, and then African traditional religion believes that death takes them away from planet Earth, but does not take away life from them. So, and hence why the name living dead, right? So, death is basically your death on earth, but life hasn't been taken away from you. And then only those persons who led good lives can become ancestors. Okay, so this is a fundamental principle. You cannot become an ancestor if you did not live or lead a good life in this world. And that is it. Okay, so that is it on African traditional religion. We're going to look at a question paper, or a question that I've extracted from a question paper. And again, they give you the extract below, and they say teachings are related to belief, or to belief in the sense that followers will have faith in a particular religion because they have accepted a set of teachings that they feel is true. So here again, you will see with reference to one religion you have studied, answer the following questions: the nature of the world, the nature of divinity. Write 5 facts that explain what this religion teaches about life after death. So again, boys and girls, we see, right, you're going to have maybe 3 maximum central teachings, and it can be a variety of options. And I want to go back to show you those options. There we go. Right? It can be 2, 4, 5. It can be 3 of these 5 central teachings. Okay, so it is important for you to master all of them. So if any one of them comes in, you are able to master it in your question paper. Okay, so back to the question paper. So how to answer this question, very importantly. Okay, so how do we answer this particular question? Okay, Conita, can I finish after this? If that's fine with you. Um, okay, just give me a
Hi,
second.
assalamu alaikum. Sorry
Walaikum
to
salam.
interrupt you.
No,
Yeah,
no problem, no
this
problem.
lesson is most certainly very interesting.
Yes.
What will happen next is that how long will it take for you to carry on with this, as we are nearing the end of the segment,
It's just
and we
this.
are
It's just the
preparing.
slide, Conita.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, okay, awesome. Okay, so just to end of this central teachings, how do we answer this question? So very importantly, focus on a focus should be based on the religion of your choice. Okay, so like I said before, choose your religion that you form part of and ATR. Okay, so for example, in question 1.1 to 1.3 in the previous slide, right, you cannot choose different religions for the 3 different central teachings. You need to um, choose the one religion and discuss it in all three central teachings. So it is important for you to know that if you don't do that, right, if you change your religion, right, your responses are not going to be rewarded, because the instruction requires you to choose one religion and then move through it from 1.1 all the way to 1.3. Next week, I am going to touch on the role of rituals, and then we are going to move on to the internal differences, which is an important topic as well. So, inshallah, we will continue next week. Shukran, Konita.
Shukran once again to you, Fatima, for joining us and sharing
Afwan,
and taking
afwan.
us through the lessons to help prepare our matriculants for the final exams. For now, we end off and bid you farewell. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum